Hi, this is Retonia. Welcome to Race Talks with Retonia. We are going to be talking about the effects of Christianity and the role it played in racism in America. It's going to be interesting. All right, we'll see you in a minute.
Oh, say, can you see? That's what they want us to believe in so blindly. But we got to take a stance and start talking about the truth and the facts. So, let's chat. Race Talks with Retonia. Race Talks with Retonia. Yeah, Race Talks with Retonia.
Welcome back, it's Retonia. So we're going to be talking about the effects of Christianity and its role with racism in the church. Now this is an interesting one. I've been a Christian for a really long time, and so I have some insight on this. One of the first questions I ask is, how does the majority culture affect people of color when they attend those kinds of services? People of color sometimes feel invisible in a church that is the multicultural, the majority culture. There are many times when there is no true representation of our culture. If a person of color speaks up or out about dismantling racism, they are oftentimes silenced. Okay? We are asked to assimilate in ways that makes the white majority church more comfortable. We're asked to constantly blend in. There are times when things that concern people of color often are overlooked or not addressed or pushed to the side. People of color sometimes feel less than our counterparts. Our decisions are not valuable. We are not asked to the table to collaborate on some of the major things that happen. And this can be harmful. Sometimes we, as people of color, are individually or even corporately feel that our situations that happen to us, that they don't affect everyone else, and so we tend to be quiet about it, or we internalize our harm and our hurt, and we don't feel like we have someone that we can go to in our church and speak to about these things because we're so passionate about them. Take, for instance, Trayvon Martin and Sandra Bland and Michael Brown. When those things happen to our community, they are personal. We take those personally. We think like, what if that was my son? What if that was my daughter? What if that was my brother or my uncle? And for the majority culture, it's very hard for them to understand that because they see things individually. And a lot of times more we see things as an oppressed community. We see things corporately sometimes. And so we're put into a box and we're asked not to make people uncomfortable by having these conversations in public. People of color tend to switch codes when they're in the majority culture, and especially in church. And it is a means and a mechanism to survive. So we say the right things. We say the things that we know will water maybe how we really truly feel about things down. Or sometimes we just don't say anything. Please, we are not the white Christians project. And what I mean by that is get to know us. Get to know who we are as individuals. Don't get to know us just because you want to be able to say, oh, I have a friend of color. Oh, I'm not racist. I have a friend that's black or Asian or Latino. But let it be from your heart. Be true, be honest. Really want to cultivate a relationship with people of color because you value what they bring to the table. So how is the church doing in the ways of dismantling racism? And that's a big one, okay? Here are some things that can stop us and can block the process. Individualism. And what that means is that a lot of times the majority culture sees racism as an individual problem and an individual act. And they say things like, oh, well, I'm not a Ku Klux Klan. I'm not a white supremacist. And so they see racism in those narratives only. And the thing about racism is those are outflows of racism. Those are not the things that are truly racist, because what we understand as people of color, we can identify a Ku Klux Klan just like you can. But it's those subtle things like we talked about last episode. It is not our problem. Sometimes the multicultural will say. It's not our problem. We don't live in that area. We have a good area. We don't have racism in our town, or we don't have racism in our church. So we don't need to talk about that. Or talking about it just makes it worse. Why do you want to talk about it? So those are the things that can hinder us moving forward as a corporate body or church to dismantle racism. Another thing is separation. So we don't think of people of color as our true brothers and sisters. We think that it's that black and brown problem. It's not our problem. So we're not taking the men in the community as a church as our problem, a part of God's Ameo Day. What we know is that white supremacy is exposed overtly and covertly in every way in this country. So to remove those roadblocks, we must be honest about our history and about how the church did things to uphold implicit and complicit in this area. So, spiritually. And what I mean by spiritually is that we spiritualize everything. Things like, oh, Jesus will handle that. Only way that racism is going to get over is that we just give it to Jesus. These sayings are very, very harmful, but they also dehumanize us. Or things like, well, I don't see color. That's also very harmful. It says that I'm not valuable. It says that I don't matter. And so what we need to understand is that in the church, as a part of God's Ameo Day, is that it's our responsibility as Christians to work out dismantling racism and dealing with injustices. We are Jesus's hands and feet, okay? So once he changes our heart, we should want to be able to be a part of the dismantling of racism. It is very important. And then there's a false equivalence, and that is that you compare yourself and your pain as a multicultural, as the white majority culture, to be the same as people that have been oppressed for hundreds of years. That narrative that says, well, what about black lives, black on black crime, or all lives matter? Those are insensitive things. Or comparing the Black Panther to the Ku Klux Klan, which is a false narrative. It is not the same. And there's proof and there's history to support that it is not. So we need to make sure that we understand is that people of color have centuries of receipts of the racism and the dehumanization that has happened to us in this country. And then what we do sometimes in the church and in our communities is we redirect or misdirect. And what that means is that we, instead of confronting racism or a scenario or an area in racism, we try to deflect and turn that around. And so we accuse the person of color of being angry, and we start talking about their tone and their voice. And so we try to knock off the centering of what the problem truly is. And this can be very, very harmful also. And So what I'm suggesting is that for solutions, is that we stop, we take a minute, we acknowledge, and then we do some work on ourselves as a church and as a community. We listen to people of color, we validate them, we don't tell them that their story isn't real. We tell them that we hear them, even though we may not understand, that we hear them and that their voices are valuable and that they have something to bring to the table. So we need to make sure that we don't do things in our church just for charity, but we do things to truly work justice. And what I mean by that is that it's easy to go give children in Africa food and water, and then you come home and you vote in ways that harm the marginalized people in your community. And so we have to put our mercy and we have to put our justice together for us to move forward. So I just want you to understand that the church is a very, very important element in dismantling racism. And we need to get to work, and we need to be honest, and we need to be real, and we need to listen to our brothers and sisters so that we can be a part of the change. All right? Thank you. Have a great day.